Okay, so you're talking about x squared plus 2x plus 1, which is these pieces here, x squared 2x plus 1. And then what you did was you took them and you said, let's form them into a rectangle, which you did, like this, with the Mortensen Math blocks. And then you said, and if you look at that, that's x plus 1 across and x plus 1 up, which is a special kind of rectangle, which is a square, x plus 1 square. Can you see it's x plus 1 both ways? And then you said, let's let x equal 1/2. So I've just substituted in 1/2 everywhere we see x. So 1/2 plus 1 across, this will be 1/2 plus 1 across and 1/2 plus 1 up, or 1/2 plus 1 squared. You could also put it in up here if you wanted to substitute x in x equals 1/2, and here you could say 1/2 squared plus 2 times 1/2 plus 1. Do you notice, and what is something that's really important, that that 1 stays the same? It's not an unknown, so it's not, we don't substitute anything in for it. Okay, so if you remember, Jim cut the blocks for the Mortensen Math blocks into halves and quarters for me. I don't know if you saw the video or not, but I asked him to do that, and there was a reason why I asked him to do it, and it was actually for questions like this. So what I'm going to do is substitute in with Mortensen Math blocks first, and then I'll show you with Cuisenaire rods why you're having a bit of trouble and how to kind of fix that. So x equals 1/2. So let's look at this right here. This means that it's half across and half up. And we've already, the biggest thing, most important thing is you've got to define your 1. And we've already done that with this model. That's our 1 right there. Hopefully you can see my model. That's the 1 right there. So half of 1, if we cut 1 in half that way, it would be this little bit here. So we want that little bit across, but we also only want that little bit up. We don't want it a whole 1 up. So we have to take it half across and half up. Can you see how that's half across and half up? And we're going to substitute this big x square out for that, because that's what that looks like when we substitute it out half across and half up. Okay, this one here is, actually let's look at this one first. This one here, yeah, actually no, it's this one here. This is half across and 1 up. Can you see that? So we want it half across and 1 up. Actually, did I do that correct? I think it's 1 across and half up. I think it's this one here. So 1 across and half up. This one here is half across and 1 up. And then this one here is this one here. So I might have gotten a little bit ahead of myself here. We're going to substitute that in, 1/2 across and 1 up. We're going to substitute this in, 1 across and half up. And this doesn't have to be substituted because it's just 1 across and 1 up. So can you see how you can form that easily into a rectangle? And in this case, a special kind of rectangle is square. And then when we look at all the pieces, we've got 1/4 plus 1/2 plus 1/2 plus 1, which is the same as 2 1/4. You push them together, there's 2. 1, 2 1/4. Maybe I should put it that way. 2 1/4. Okay, so can you see it's pretty easy to do that with Mortensen Math blocks, right? But you get into a little bit of trouble when you're using the Cuisenaire rods with this, but not trouble you can't get out of. So let's put our model back up. We still have x squared 2x and 1, or x plus 1 across and x plus 1 up, or x plus 1 squared. Okay, now remember how I said that we have already defined the 1 here? Well, you did too. You defined your 1, and that's your 1. That you said was 1/2, which is correct. That's 1/2 of 1, because 2 of those fit in there. If you look at that, 2 of those fit in there. Okay, and then you said that this is 1/4, and that is 1/4, and the reason it's 1/4 is because 4 of those fit in there into your 1. So let me just move that. Can you see how 4 of those fit into your 1? So that's 1/4. Actually, you guys defined that. You didn't actually define this as anything. You we're thinking that that is a quarter. And I get what your thinking was, because it kind of stumped me too for a minute. I had to kind of think through what was going on, and I was almost like, yeah, that looks right, but then I was thinking, no, something's not quite right. So I played around. That's not a quarter. That is an eighth. Can you see how you'd fit 8 of those into there? That's an eighth. Okay, I think where the trouble is you might have been looking at this part of this and thinking, oh, that's a half by a half, right? But technically the half is this way here. Okay, and because I'm not going to actually say what I was thinking there. Okay, so what happens here is if we substitute these in for our pieces, a quarter or a half by a half, right, does give us a quarter, and a half by 1 gives us that. I believe that's where that one goes, and then 1 by a half I think goes there, and then our 1 is no longer this. Our 1 is that. So those are your pieces. So let's just take those back out for a minute. So we're going to substitute this out. Keep in mind though what shape this is. This is supposed to be a square. Okay? That's not square. That doesn't mean we can't turn it into a square though. And then this is a rectangle, and that is a rectangle, but it's not going to be the rectangle we use, and then we substitute that out. Now, the reason that we have to substitute this out is because these are different blocks, and that one is it has a different look than this one. They're absolutely worth the same value, but they look different. And because we're using Cuisenaire rods, we're going to switch this one out for that one, because keep in mind, you said that this was 1. Because if that's 1/2, that has to be 1, and that's your quarter. So you've still got your 4 rectangles in here, but they're not really kind of, you know, going together nice and easy. So what I did is I made Play-Doh. I made Play-Doh ones, and I'm just going to put them in here. Can you see how we still have our 1, or sorry, our quarter, our 2/2, and our 1? But it's not really fitting together nice, right? And I think that's maybe what threw you a little bit. So now I actually reshaped I made 2 sets of this. I reshaped this into the shape of a square, because isn't this what we were looking at x squared? Half by a half, right? And although a half by a half is a quarter, we wanted it shaped in the shape of a square. So I reshaped it best as I could, you know, into a square. I'm not really an artist at heart, but that's my square. I'm going to stand by that. That's my beautiful square. Okay, and then if you look at this, this has to be a square too, right? Because that's a square. So do you see how we're taking these 2 squares out and we're replacing them with squares? So that was your, I'll even just put that right there. Do you see how you had your 2 squares, right? And this still works. I mean, we've got our rectangles, right? But they still don't fit. So we have to reshape those as well. So I reshaped them, and I reshaped them. And now I don't know if you can see or not, or if you can tell, but if this is my whole one, right? This one here, just reshaped. Can you see how that's a half and that's a half? Right? But now my 1 is in the shape of a square. And my halves are in the shape of a rectangle, which I needed because these were rectangles, right? So I've got my square, got my 2 rectangles, got my other square. This is 1/2 by 1/2, because this one here is 1 by 1/2, so this has to be 1/2. So 1/2 by 1/2, that's your quarter. And can you see how that is a quarter of that? And then this is 1/2 by 1. See, 1/2 by 1. Can you see how that's 1 by 1 by 1? So this is 1/2, or 1/2 by 1. And then this is 1 by 1/2. Can you see 1 by 1/2? And then this is just 1 by 1. You've still got your whole one, your 2/2, and your quarter. So you've got 2 and 1/4. The key to this here is that if they're not going to fit nicely into a rectangle, you have to reshape them. And what you had here was this, and it wasn't really fitting nicely into a rectangle. So you really needed to reshape them. Oh, actually, sorry, my mistake. You had this. keep in mind, actually what I did see on there was that you have to, this is your 1, that's what's up in the corner. This is not a quarter, that's an eighth. A true quarter here, if that's a half and that's a 1, is that. Okay, so this is absolutely correct, but if you want to show how it forms into a rectangle like it does with the Mortensen Math blocks, you got to actually reshape. So just got to get out some Play-Doh and play. Have a little bit of fun. Kids love it. Might take a bit of time. Maybe get out some rolling pins and I don't know, just have fun with it. There's a lot to this, but hopefully that makes a little bit more sense. If you've still got questions, ask me. If there's something that I've made a mistake in here, please point it out, because you really did stump me with this one. I had to really think about it for a few minutes before I came up with... I really got stumped on thinking about that one. I was just not... It just wasn't clicking in my head. And then once I realized that that needed to come out, then I was like, ah, okay. And also defining your 1. Anyways, I'm rambling. I hope this helps. Let me know if it does. Let me know if it doesn't. And yeah, keep throwing these things at me. I really like them. They're a lot of fun. Okay, bye.